The U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress bombers have been front and center during the ongoing Northern Edge exercise in Alaska, first testing target data for an experimental hypersonic missile, and then working with fighter jets. On May 5th, a B-52 flew a 13-hour round-trip sortie to Alaska from Birksdale Air Force Base, LA, to test data transmission and target sensing. For the AGM-183 Air-Launched Rapid Response Weapon, a hypersonic missile being developed by Lockheed Martin for the Air Force, the service said in a news release Thursday. A prototype of the hypersonic missile traveled up to 8 times the speed of sound, with a range of 1,000 miles, according to a report last month made by the Congressional Research Service. For last week's test, during which no projectiles were actually fired, the B-52 received data from a command and control team gathered at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. The team, part of the exercise's all-domain operation capability experiment, is synchronizing joint functions in forward locations during the 2 weeks of training that ends Friday, the Air Force said. In this experiment, sensors operated by the command and control team sent target data to the B-52s, which was more than 1,000 miles away. The bomber then made a successful simulated hit of the target from 600 nautical miles away using a hypersonic missile. The bomber crew confirmed the hit to other aircraft in the air, which the so-called kill chain for a successful missile strike. This was a test of the data link that makes hypersonic weapon targeting possible, said First Lieutenant Savannah Bray, an Air Force spokeswoman. Quote, "As supersonic missile testing continues to go through the steps that it takes to eventually field this weapon, this is a major milestone in the data-forming process." End quote. The experiment was one step in developing tactics that will be used by, for example, a pilot in the bomber's cockpit to accurately fire the weapon once it becomes operational, Bray said. Meanwhile, on Friday, a B-52 flew from Andersen Air Force Base, Guam, to the vast Joint Pacific-Alaska Range Complex, where it joined up with U.S. fighter jets during a Northern Edge Bomber Task Force mission. The objective was to establish tactics and procedures in working with Navy and Marine Corps personnel. The Air Force said in a news release Monday, quote, "We have to get reps as a team," Lieutenant Colonel Jared Pierre, commander of the 20th Bomb Squadron and the Bomber Task Force, said in the news release. "It's like basketball. Sure, I could practice free throws by myself, but there's nothing like running drills with the rest of the team," he said. That is what we're doing with Northern Edge. The long-range B-52s can carry both nuclear and conventional bombs, and can fly more than 8,800 miles without refueling. B-52 engine replacement could keep flying through its 100th birthday. It was 75 years ago this June that the U.S. Army Air Forces first awarded Boeing a modest $1.7 million contract to begin work on a new strategic bomber. Later this year, the 76 remaining B-52 Stratofortresses will start to get new engines that just might keep the vulnerable bomber flying through its 100th birthday. The biggest modernization program in its history will replace the 8 Pratt & Whitney TF-33 engines that have powered each jet since the 1960s, said Air Force B-52 Senior Material Leader, Colonel Louis Ricchetta. By the time the replacement is complete, the Stratofortress will have outlasted both of its current contemporaries, the B-1 Lancer conventional bomber and the B-2 stealth bomber. The new engines are intended to enable the B-52 to serve alongside the future B-21 Raider as the airborne leg of the nuclear triad into the 2050s. When we built the B-52, it was supposed to be a high-altitude nuclear bomber, right? Going to the adversary, said Major General Andrew Jabara, Director of Strategic Plans, Programs, and Requirements at Air Force Global Strike Command. Then it became a low-altitude nuclear bomber. Then it became a high-altitude carpet bomber in Vietnam. And then it became a standoff cruise missile shooter in Desert Storm. Then it became a precision strike close air support platform in Afghanistan and Iraq. And now we're going to make it the first hypersonic shooter in the American inventory, Jabara said, referring to the integration testing underway to fit the B-52 with the AGM-183A Air-Launched Rapid Response Weapon. "I don't think the original plan was to go 75 years, said Jennifer Wong, Boeing's Senior Director for Bomber Programs. But the way the aircraft was designed, it was designed with a lot of structural margin. Wong and Jabara said the B-52's design erred on the side of caution in calculating the stresses the aircraft would face in its original high-altitude mission. That precaution has made it cheaper to hang new weapons on an old frame than to design a new aircraft. The bomber has shown signs of structural strain and has been updated with modern parts over its years. Several changes were made after a B-52 carrying 2 hydrogen bombs broke apart over Goldsboro, North Carolina in 1961. As the plane spun to the ground, one of the bombs activated but did not detonate. After that incident, which killed 3 crew members, sections of the outer skin on the plane's wings, spine, and tail were replaced with a tougher aluminum alloy. Some structural changes were made to the bomber's internal frame, but the bones of it are still a 60-year-old airplane, Jabara said. Each of the remaining 76 bombers was built between 1961 and 1962. The engine overhaul won't change, that the $11.1 billion CERP, or Commercial Engine Replacement Program, is expected to replace only about 10% of the bomber's overall components. The new engines won't increase the bomber's speed. Even the existing engines could fly faster but don't. To reduce stress on the airframe, Ricetta expects that the new engines could increase the bomber's fuel efficiency by as much as 30%, which could ease demand for the aerial refueling tanker fleet. Other modifications to the bomber that are already underway include replacing the B-52's original AMAPQ-166 radars with active electronically scanned array AESA radars, new nuclear command and control radios, and fitting the B-52 with new long-range standoff weapons. Those swaps have the Air Force considering further reducing the size of the crew, Jabara said. We think the large number of upgrades we're doing on B-52 to the radar and the mission we expected to do, we're going to come off of 5 down to 4. We'd like to combine the navigator position and the electronic warfare officer position. But the bomber can hold up to a crew of 10, which has had the Air Force thinking of other possibilities too, Jabara said. Normally in combat, we would only fly 5. When we get to 4, I could see a world in which we could. You know, if I fly 3 B-52s on a bomber task force mission, I could put 6 maintainers in every one of those extra seats, and we could self-deploy in some limited circumstances. So it's exciting. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.